Right now, while you're watching this, 5 Windows 11 services are running silently in the background, and at least one of them has already sent data to Microsoft's servers today. Not last week, not during setup. Today. While you were working, browsing, or just leaving your machine idle on the kitchen counter. These aren't features you opted into knowingly. They're baked into the operating system, at a level most people never look at, and they have names designed to sound like routine maintenance. I'm going to tell you exactly what each one is, what it's actually sending, and how to shut each one down. Let me show you what's really happening under the hood. Before we get into the list, you need to understand what we're actually looking at. These aren't viruses, they're not exploits, they're legitimate Windows services, processes that Microsoft built deliberately, ships on every consumer machine, and enables by default. The reason most people never find them is that they don't appear in your app list, they don't request permission in any obvious way, and the settings menus that touch them are buried several layers deep behind language that's deliberately soft. Improve your experience. Help us make Windows better. You've seen those phrases. What they actually mean is worth examining much more carefully than the dialog boxes suggest. Now, let's start with the one that's been documented the longest and has been expanded the most significantly in Windows 11. It's called DiagTrack. The full service name is Connected User Experiences and Telemetry. If you open Task Manager right now and click over to the Services tab, there's a good chance you'll see it running. It runs constantly and it runs quietly. DiagTrack has been the subject of serious independent network analysis since Windows 10, but the scope of what it transmits was significantly broadened when Windows 11 launched, and broadened again with the 23H2 update. Researchers at the University of Edinburgh published a network traffic analysis examining what DiagTrack actually sends across the wire. Their methodology was straightforward. They captured all outbound traffic from a clean Windows installation using Wireshark, then cataloged the destinations and payload structures. What they found was specific. DiagTrack transmits device identifiers, application usage data, performance metrics, and crash logs, but also behavioral data. How long specific applications are in focus, input activity patterns across sessions, usage frequency data for individual features within applications, the raw shape of your computing day, timestamped and packaged. Now, Microsoft's official line is that this feeds reliability improvements in feature development. And honestly, some of it probably does. But here's the part that I find harder to dismiss. Even when you navigate into your Windows settings, go to Privacy and Security, go to Diagnostics and Feedback, and set your diagnostic data level to the lowest available option, DiagTrack doesn't stop transmitting. It reduces volume. It changes what categories of data it prioritizes. But the service stays active and outbound connections continue. Privacy researcher Beatrice Barletta presented network capture evidence on exactly this behavior at the 2024 Privacy Enhancing Technologies Symposium. She ran multiple Wireshark sessions on machines with telemetry set to minimum and documented persistent outbound traffic to Microsoft telemetry endpoints after the settings change. Think about what that means for you specifically. You went into settings, found the privacy controls, turned them down as far as the interface lets you, and the service kept running anyway. The second service is CDPS VC, the Connected Devices Platform Service. On paper, it sounds like what it does is manage your Bluetooth speaker or your wireless printer. That's part of it. But CDPS VC also maintains a continuous activity timeline, a structured log of what applications you're running, what files you're interacting with, and when. This is what feeds the Windows Timeline feature, the one that lets you pick up where you left off on documents you were working on. If you're signed into a Microsoft account, that activity log isn't just stored locally, it syncs up. Security consultant Gary Davis published a detailed breakdown on this in early 2025, focusing initially on enterprise environments. But his findings translate directly to home users. CDPS VC assigns and maintains persistent session identifiers that follow your activity even across signouts and restarts. The activity data it logs can include document titles and application focus time. And here's the part that surprised me when I first went through his report. If you're using Edge as your browser, CDPS VC can capture URL fragments from your browsing session through the operating system layer. Not through a browser extension you installed, but through the OS service running beneath the browser. That's a different level of access than most people assume a background service has. You might be thinking, I don't use Edge, and I'm signed out of any Microsoft account, so this doesn't apply to me. The CloudSync piece of CDPS VC does require a Microsoft account, so you're right about that part. But the local activity logging and the persistent identifiers run regardless of whether you're signed in. The data builds on your machine whether it goes up to a server or not. Third, Sysmain. You might know it under its old name, Superfetch. Microsoft renamed it at some point, and the public description of what it does sounds entirely benign. It maintains and improves system performance by predicting which applications you'll open next and preloading them into memory. The performance function is real, but sysmain builds a detailed behavioral profile as a byproduct of doing that job. It tracks which applications you open at which times of day, how your usage shifts across the week, what your typical workflow looks like across sessions. That profile lives locally and is used for the preloading function, but it's also accessible to other Windows services, including DiagTrack. So when someone turns down their telemetry settings and feels like they've addressed the problem, what they've often done is close one pipe while leaving another one completely open. Sysmain is feeding the same behavioral intelligence through a different door. This is a good moment to pull the lens back, because I want you to see the shape of this before we get to service 4 and 5. Individually, each of these services sounds almost defensible, almost routine. DiagTrack is for reliability, CDPS VC is for cross-device continuity, sysmain is for performance. But taken together, they're assembling a detailed picture of your computing behavior from multiple angles simultaneously. What you do, when you do it, for how long, in what sequence, against what other activities. It's like a building where the locks on the front door are clearly labeled, and you're allowed to change them. But there are windows on the third floor that are always cracked open and nobody puts them on the tour. The fourth service is called DMWAPush service. The name is a relic from the Windows Mobile era, WAP push message routing service. On a modern desktop machine, WAP push messaging is a dead protocol. There is no consumer use case for it on a Windows 11 PC. And yet, it runs by default. The reason it matters is not what it does independently, but what it enables. GACS writer Martin Brinkman published a detailed breakdown of this in 2024. DMWAPush service is a functional dependency for DiagTrack's data transmission pipeline. Disable DiagTrack without also disabling DMWAPush service, and you've cut one route while leaving the infrastructure it depends on intact and running. The majority of Disable Windows telemetry guides you'll find online stop at DiagTrack. They're not wrong. DiagTrack is the main actor. But incomplete is still incomplete. Fifth is WSearch, the Windows Search Indexer. Local search indexing is a legitimate and useful function. It's what makes your file search fast. The issue is specifically what happens to your search queries when you type into the Start menu or the Taskbar search bar. By default, in Windows 11, those queries are not searched locally first and then sent out if needed. They go to Bing. The Electronic Frontier Foundation flagged this specifically in a 2024 advisory on Windows 11's default search behavior, documenting that query strings are transmitted to Microsoft servers as part of the search process. And the thing about search queries is that they tend to be honest. People search for medical symptoms. They search for financial situations they're embarrassed about. They search for people's names after arguments. They search for things they'd never say out loud. When you type something into what looks like a local search bar and it makes a round trip to a remote server, the expectation of privacy you had in that moment didn't match the reality. Now let's talk about what to actually do, because this is the part that matters. I want to be clear about scope before we get into it. If you're in a managed enterprise environment, or if your organization runs compliance-dependent software that relies on Windows telemetry for reporting, some of these changes may conflict with your IT policy. Don't make them on a work machine without checking with your administrator first. And none of what follows touches Windows Defender, Windows Update, or Windows Firewall. Keep all of those running. This is about data collection services, not security services. Start with DiagTrack and DMWAPush service together because they need to be addressed as a pair. Press the Windows key, type services.msc, and hit Enter. This opens the Services Management Console, a list of every background service running on your machine. Scroll down until you find Connected User Experiences and Telemetry. Right-click it and select Properties. In the Startup Type drop-down, change it from Automatic to Disabled. Click Stop to kill the currently running process, then hit Apply. Now find DMWAPush service in the same list. It might be listed as Device Management Wireless Application Protocol Push Message Routing Service in full, and do the same. Set it to Disabled, stop it, Apply. Restart your machine after both are done. When you come back, open services.msc again and confirm both show Stopped and Disabled. That confirmation step matters. Some Windows updates have been known to re-enable telemetry services after major releases. For CDPS VC, same process. Open services.msc and find Connected Devices Platform Service. You may see two entries, one called Connected Devices Platform Service and another with User Service appended to the name. Disable and stop both. Disabling CDPS VC turns off Windows Timeline entirely, so if you rely on that feature to pick up where you left off on documents, that stops working. For most people, that's a straightforward trade. If Timeline is genuinely important to your workflow, an alternative is to leave CDPS VC running But go to Settings, Privacy and Security, Activity History, and disable Store My Activity History on this device. That reduces what gets logged and stops the Cloud Sync component, though the service itself continues running. For Sysmain, the right call depends on your hardware. If your machine has an SSD, and if you bought it in the last 4 or 5 years, it almost certainly does, Sysmain doesn't meaningfully improve performance anyway. SSDs are fast enough that application preloading doesn't produce a noticeable benefit. On an SSD, disable Sysmain exactly as you did with the others. On a traditional spinning hard drive, Sysmain does provide real performance gains, and disabling it will make your machine feel noticeably slower. On spinning disk hardware, leave Sysmain alone and focus your attention on the other 4. For W Search and the Bing integration, there are 2 separate settings changes. First, open Settings, go to Privacy and Security, then Search Permissions. You'll see Cloud Content Search. Turn that off for both Microsoft account and work account. Second, still in Settings, search for searching windows in the Settings search bar. Under that menu, turn off Show Search Highlights. These 2 changes stop your Start menu queries from being routed externally. Your local file search keeps working exactly as before. The only thing that disappears is the Bing results and news tiles mixed into your search bar, which, in my experience, most people are quietly relieved to get rid of anyway. One additional layer worth adding if you're on Windows 11 Pro, Enterprise, or Education, press Windows key plus R, type gpedit.msc, and hit Enter. Navigate to Computer Configuration, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, Data Collection, and Preview Builds. Find the policy called Allow Diagnostic Data and set it to Disabled. This enforces the telemetry restriction at the policy level, so if a major Windows update tries to re-enable DiagTrax after the fact, it runs into this wall first. Windows 11 Home doesn't include the Group Policy Editor, but home users can achieve a similar effect through a registry edit. Search for Allow Telemetry Registry Key and set its stored value to 0. Back up your registry before editing it, and only do this if you're comfortable in the registry. If you want to go further than manual changes, tools like O&O Shutup, 10++, and Windows Spy Blocker are legitimate, free, and used by security professionals. I've tested both. They go deeper than the steps I've described, and they make the process faster. My reason for walking you through the manual steps first is straightforward. I want you to know what you're changing before you hand a tool the keys to change it. Now, before you close this tab, I want to sit with something for a minute. The thing that actually bothers me about these 5 services isn't that they exist. Operating systems have collected diagnostic data for a long time, and some of that serves a real purpose. What bothers me is the architecture of the consent. The settings Microsoft shows you in the privacy menus give you a genuine feeling of having made a choice. You found the diagnostic data setting, you turned it down as low as it goes, and you felt like you handled it. But DiagTrax kept running. CDP-SVC kept building its activity log. DM will push service kept sitting there waiting. The interface was designed to feel like a choice, while the underlying behavior continued on a track you didn't know existed. I don't think that's accidental, and I don't think it's just an oversight in the UI design. Microsoft's commercial interests in behavioral data are substantial. This stuff feeds AI training pipelines, advertising targeting infrastructure, and product development decisions worth billions of dollars annually. The defaults are not neutral. They're set in Microsoft's interest, not yours. You're not paranoid for caring about this. You're not being unreasonable for wanting your machine to do what you ask it to do and not report back about it. The expectation that a computer you bought is working for you, not on you, is just a baseline expectation of ownership. The 5 services we covered today are not obscure or theoretical. They're running right now on most Windows 11 machines that haven't been specifically configured. The people who have configured them are not hackers or extremists. They're people who decided that the defaults didn't reflect their preferences and changed them. You can do that. You just saw exactly how. 40 minutes of work, 5 disabled services, and your machine is running considerably cleaner than it was before you hit play. Do this today, not this weekend, not when you get around to it, today. The process is straightforward, it costs nothing, and once it's done, you don't revisit it. If this is the kind of content you find useful, specific, documented, no sponsors, no affiliate pressure, subscribe. I cover these issues as they develop, not weeks after everyone else. And drop a comment below. Which of these 5 services did you not know about before this video? I read every single one.